Juan Perez. Juan, I think, was your first job here at Esperanza my NA?
It was.
My medical assistant. And now he's my boss. So, be careful. So Juan has had a great illustrious career with his institution, starting out at a ground level, entry level job, and working his way to CFO. Yeah.
CO.
CO? Oh, CO. Oh, that's right, CO. Even better. CO. And he's going to introduce you to a little bit to the community, a little bit to his story, a little bit to Esperanza Health Center.
Sure. How you doing? Well, so it's good. It's like just what you need. 5 o'clock, end of the day, feeling a little like, okay. I was like, I couldn't be at the beginning of the day, right? on a Sunday. So, my name is, like Dr. Layer said, my name is Juan Perez. I'm a 45-year-old Puerto Rican, born and raised in Philadelphia. I love Philadelphia. I say the words yo. I eat cheesesteaks. I say John. You know, you heard of John? John.
Next up.
Okay. I do. I love John. I ride the dog here. What? Oh, okay. I didn't see that. Yeah, that's all right. I'll do that. I'll do it to my kids. Wait. Okay. I used to be a teacher. Anyway, I'll ride and die with the Eagles, with the Sixers, with the Flyers, whether I've seen a game or not, whether they're last place, first place, it doesn't matter, right? Philadelphia, I love it. The entirety of my career has been, my working career has been here at 19140 and surrounding zip codes for the last 20-something years. I've worked as foster care social worker. I was a 5th, 6th, 7th grade teacher. I was a chemistry and physical science teacher at one point. I was a Spanish language interpreter, and then for 8 years I was a medical respiratory ICU nurse over at Tomball Hospital. So and then they've asked me, they say, hey, come and talk about North Philadelphia, a little bit about Esperanza, and that's always a little odd for me because I'm like, well, what do you say? For me, it's home, right? And if you know your home, it's you know the background, you know the people, you know the crazy uncles that come over to the parties, you know the secrets that are there, but you also know the joys and the celebrations, and it's just so much. So I just had a question though, like I'll put out there the word home. Can you give me some words associated with home for you?
Comfort.
Say again?
Comfort.
Laughter.
Family. What's up? Laughter. Love.
Growth.
Mom.
Familiarity. I like that. Okay.
Food.
What about the word security? What words are associated with that with you? I'm just
Safe.
Safe.
Stable.
Dependable. So having something that's dependable. Okay. Structure. Sport. So these are things for you. What about child? Innocence. Okay.
Noise.
Teacher. Okay. What about drug dealing?
Risky.
Say again? Anything else?
Iris.
Risky. Street pharmacist.
Provision.
Interesting. Okay. That's great. So, yeah, I guess maybe what I'm thinking about North Philadelphia, I think of my experiences. I think before we start to stay there, I think it's good to come from a position of knowing what lens you're looking at those words, right? Like what is it that feeds and inputs into your mind to give you your definitions of security, of home? Because here in North Philadelphia, there's a wide gamut to that, right? Especially with the experience of home. When we all talk about it, there was a lot of positive things going there, but there may be times when home is not a safe place. Home is, well, some people would say, well, which one? Because there could be multiple homes. And maybe there's differing experiences there, right? I think being able to connect all of those things together to say, what's the integration of my mindset and all the inputs that go into those words? And you could throw in there healthcare, education, family structure. We could go on with a full list that gives you a definition of a community, right? And I think for me, one of the things that I feel like North Philadelphia has been plagued with or has been victimized is kind of the singular story syndrome. And that's not a term that I've coined, but it's and I think that for me, right, because I've grown up here, I've lived here, right, till recently, until about 5 years ago, and I feel like that's one of the things that hurts me the most. And I was listening to the news a couple years ago, right, and I was kind of on the side, and I heard them say, hey, let's talk, up next is going to be, we're going to talk about gun violence here in North Philadelphia, and the 19140, 19133 area zip codes, so I sparked up. So they're talking about how it's one of the most violent places in the city, and then they gave some other statistics that, you've been giving statistics, I don't need to give you a whole bunch of statistics, but, and then, you know how they banter back and forth sometimes? Was the lady, the other one said, wow, they must be scared all the time. I said, what? So how are you going to say that on, I said, is this national television? I'm like, this is my home. This is not my experience. This is not scared all the time. I couldn't believe that. So I started to connect that with the things that I know, with the people that I know, right? And I'll tell you about Shelly. Shelly was a 30-year-old African-American female, lived not too far from here. She had 2 daughters, a husband. The husband, she was a great neighbor. She loved the community. Her husband was a drug dealer and was operating a drug ring right outside of there, right? Sadly enough, a couple of years into it, the cops came, did his thing, pulled her out, pulled the husband out, took out the kids. She served her time 2 years later, 2 years in jail. Came out. After 2 years, the kids are with grandma, and here she is. Now she comes down to the community center that I was there with at the time. She's like, I need help finding a job. Listen, I need something different. I need something for myself. I need something for my kids. This is not, I get it. Look, I'm no longer with, her long-time love because, it just wasn't working. She kind of grew a little bit out of that. And so we helped her with resumes. It was back in the day, when you're writing down the resumes, not just on Indeed to LinkedIn. And so we drove her around. We took her, literally, I think maybe over 30-something, 40-something places. We're like, we're getting you a job. Couldn't find a job. Nobody wants to hire her next time. She kept going. She could get a couch surf. Her mother wouldn't give her the kids. Then the mother says, I don't want the kids here in my house anymore. She wants to be with them. One day I walk out of, I'm on 5th in Indiana, which is right near our other site, and she's on the corner selling drugs. I'm like, yo, Michelle, what's going on? She's like, I want to throw away my kids. I don't have any food. I don't have any money. I don't have a place. So look, I'm not here to talk about whether or not that's right or wrong. I'm not trying to have a little discussion. What I'm trying to say is that the singular story, right? The singular story there is that the drug dealer is out to her communities. The drug dealer is out to be able to, it's singular, right? It destroys, they're self-centered, they care for them only for themselves. There's a lot of truth with a lot of these things, but if you strip that story down, and you go and you look around, there's more to it. All I'm saying is much more complex, right? So the story here is much more complex. When you look at Mario, homelessness, what's the singular story in homelessness? They're what? They're drug addicted, they're alcoholics, they don't want to get themselves up. So Mario comes one day and he comes into the center and he was like, hey, I need, can you guys in Spanish? And he's like, can you help me? So he had a cast on. Cast has been on for about 5 months. 5.5 months. Said, and he's like, it is rot, like his skin is rotting underneath. Nobody wanted to take it off. So, he's homeless, he's dirty, I'm like, what's going on? What's the story here? Well, I was in Jersey. So he brought over from Mexico with through, Coyote, kind of illegally came through. But he's like, I need to support my family. I'm looking for a new life. I worked at the berry fields over in Jersey. And he says, then they stopped paying me. And then they told me to just keep working. And then, but they don't want to call. And so I escaped. And so I was in the street. And then I got beat on the bench one day in this community. And they told me to leave and I couldn't be there anymore. And so I came over to Philadelphia because people told me that I can find a job. Really, there's a Home Depot right up here where sometimes you'll see people out there trying to find jobs outside, right? So undocumented workers. Homelessness, drug addiction, alcoholism. It's not the story, right? All I'm saying is it's a little bit more complex. There's more layers to be talked about. Where is the humanity? I'll talk about Rosine. Rosine, she's a teenager, right? She is 17 years old. She has a 3-month-old child. 17 years old, has a 3-year-old child. I know, not a big difference. So, teen pregnancy. They're not trying to work. They're not trying to work for anything. They got themselves. They're loose. We can talk about all the stereotypes that would be out there. Rosine gets up at 5:15 every morning. She takes care of the child. She takes the buses to the daycare. She drops off the child at the daycare. Takes another one to school all day. Goes does the same thing. Picks up the child. Goes then drops it off at grandma's. Goes to work for 4 hours. Comes home. Takes the kid. Is caring for the child. Does her homework, repeat, right? 3 years. Where's that story? Right? Where is that in the narrative, right? So I don't know, I can give you a whole bunch of statistics, but I thought that maybe talking a little bit about people, right? Maybe more Philadelphia, something more about the story. So we moved out several years ago, maybe about 15 minutes up from here, and my daughter was on a bus. And she says that when she was on the bus, she was going to school, and they passed this dilapidated building, and a classmate on the bus looks at her and says, "Dang, yeah, that's a Philly house right there." She says, "Well, what do you mean?" She's like, "Not all houses look in Philly like that." She's like, "Well, what do you know?" She's like, "Well, I'm Philly." She's still paying the roots, right? Okay. She's like, when the girl's like, "Well, where you live at?" And she's like, "Hunting Park." She said, "Hunting Park? I know I'd get shot if I was in Hunting Park." So my daughter was very upset. And she started screaming and yelling. My daughter's not one of those. I got a call, blah, blah, blah. And she comes, she's like, "Pop, why? How's she going to say that? That's my place. That's my town. I wish," and then she started talking, she said, "I wish I could explain to people what the sidewalk smells like on a hot day in the rain. I wish I could show them, my experience playing in the fire hydrant, and when they closed the block, and then they have, and then she's like, do you remember the guy when you pulled out the barrel and you had that pork in there and you were turning it out over, right? So in the block parties that are here sometimes that you'll see, the music that you hear, she's like, I wish people could experience that. Now imagine if the stories were more like that, right? If that was narrative. What if, she's like, I wish I could get a limbe. You remember what a limbe is? A limbe is like a water ice that a lot of people, sometimes around here, people will make in their home and put it in a little Dixie cup and they freeze it, and then kids know where the limbe house is at, and they go and buy for 50 cents, and that's how they make some of their money. Right? So I wish we could talk about that. Chimamanda Adichie. Anybody ever heard of her? Yeah. She wrote this a book called Americana. She's a storyteller, and she did a TED Talk in 2009, and it's called The Danger of a Singular Story. And if you ever have a chance, you should listen to it. It's wonderful. And she speaks as an African who experienced the assumptions that Americans had against Africans based on the singular story, right? Like, she was saying, we have cars, I have a degree, right? But people have only a singular story. What they're thinking is over there. And she said, you show people as one thing, only one thing, over and over again, and that is what they become. Mm-hmm. And I feel, this is my home, right? This is my work, this is what I've devoted my life. And I feel like sometimes trying to get out of that cycle, like there's more than this just story, right? In North Philadelphia, there's vibrancy, there's diversity, there's attitude, okay? Mm-hmm. Attitude's not a bad thing. You might get some of that, Artists, musicians, photographers, there's all wonderful things, right? Like I can go and I list them, and then, but however, what sticks sometimes to people is the negative. And Adichie, she also says, all of these stories make me who I am, But to insist on only these negative stories is to flatten my experience and to overlook the many other stories that form me. The single story creates stereotypes, and the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they're incomplete. They make one story become the only story. Wow. Look, I can't stand here and tell you, look, I have rose-colored glasses, this is my place, this is my time. You can walk outside and you can see the dumping that's down at the block. You can see that right here there is a junkyard that I remember for as long as I have lived here. I remember 6 years old walking past it. We have tried to get it out, but corruption and political corruption continues to keep that right there. There's another one 5 blocks from here, there's another one 6 blocks down. In other areas, that would not be there. I guarantee it. I can't deny the fact that you can just Google it, that the 19140 area codes is, and N33 has one of the highest rates of homelessness, teen pregnancies, mental health issues. That the 2 strips that are right maybe within 5 minutes or a year are one of the highest sexually trafficked strips in Philadelphia, right, on Old York Road and on Kensington. One of the highest rates of trans people abuse happen on that strip here in Philadelphia. It's true, but it's incomplete. Right? I love to also tell you about the fact that right across the street is a church. It's called Spirit and Truth, and in it is Honey Park Christian Academy. And that was started over 20-something years ago by like a group of 20-year-olds and their pastors trying to combat miseducation. And this year, just now, I just know that 2 of them are going to magnet high schools now, right? Tell me that's not exciting. Tell me that it's not exciting that that right next door over here, one of the last mercury thermometer companies in the country. That's pretty cool, right? Philadelphia was a big manufacturing state. Well, they were one of there, and you know what? They used to have graffiti all over, and they still battle it. But they were told, leave it there. The insurance company said, leave it there, because the band didn't know how to break into it. You know, afterwards, though, the community came and said, yo, hey, there's these 3 awesome white guys over there, and they're like, hey, look, we tried, we do it, they come, we said, well, let's help you. What about, and all of a sudden, here you have this partnering of a 70-year manufacturing company and community working together to say, hey, it doesn't have to be like this anymore. Where's that story? A couple of years ago, there's also, right, how to combat ideology. So in the 90s, there was this lieutenant who coined so this is Honey Park, right next to it is, this way, right next to it is kind of the 5th Street quarter. Look at the order where our other site is at, and we're all about 8 minutes from each other. It's all real close. So he coined that the Badlands. All right, anybody ever heard the words, the Badlands? All right? So maybe you have, but anyway, it all of a sudden, that stuck. National. And anytime everybody spoke about Philadelphia and the drug, there's always the Badlands, the Badlands, the Badlands. And then Steve Lopez wrote the book, Third in Indiana, which propagated that even further, right? So there was this group that went and, you think we can open up the real quick? So Centro Nueva Creación is a church that's not too far from here, and put up this group called, said, hey, we want to start a project. We want to empower the youth to see things out of a more positive lens, right? We want to call it the Good Lens Project. And so they went, and we'll show it in a minute, and they started to do photography. They showed the positive aspects of the community. And one of the photographers, when you asked him, they asked him, well, why do you do this? And he said, his quote was, and I love it, because he says, if I didn't take pictures, how would you see my neighborhood like I do? Full of joy, full of peace, and family. Like, that's kind of crazy, right? Like, I was just going to show up right here. So just a few of the pictures here, right? And what's interesting is, like, if you look at these pictures, I was going to get those, but I don't have it. Either way, some of these pictures still shows some of the things, like what's coming off as beauty is some of the things that if you put it in a different context, you put this in news, I mean, like, look at the barren community, with the cement world that we live in, right? There was another one with chain links that says, well, look at it, it's only chain link fencing. There's abandoned properties in the background. There was another one with a girl who was standing in front of the house, but the windows were broken down, but you see in her face the joy that's there, right? Like, it's still this discordant view of, like, still what can be seen as negative, which people who are here, right? There's a positivity here. There's life that's here. There's joy. There's peace and family. So it's this responsibility that we have, and I guess what I'm saying is, like, I put all this to, how do we start telling more of the story? How do we, like, going to be here for a few weeks, and yet it's not just about that, because if we just leave it at rewriting a story or saying something new, it has a nice social justice sort of, like, you know, engage it. Yeah, Spanish. I throw that in there too. All right, it's a feeling, it's a social justice, but it's more than that, right? We know that part of the story that's missing here is the fact that there's transformative work also that needs to happen. There's restorative work that needs to happen. And I think that's where Esperanza comes in. Sadly enough, many people start to believe some of these definitions, right? So to say that maybe the sum of all that is bad is who I am. Maybe I am equal to my sin. Maybe I'm equal to my faults and my weaknesses. But that's what we need to come back, right? We need to go back and say, no, there's more story. There's more story. That's not your singular story. Don't feed into that, because God, when He created it all, He took a step back and said, hey, it's good. You're good. That's a story that needs to be continued to be told, right? And it's not only so much that it's good and that we need to live, but He wants us to flourish, right? He wants us to be out there. And I love the fact that if you ever think, I love the verse where it says, forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See? I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I make a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. What I love about that, don't you perceive it? Don't you see it? Don't get stuck in that singular, oh. Who's telling that part of the story? Who's telling the part of the story that there is a God that stated, that died for our sins, came for a marginalized community, to tell them that they are more than conquerors? Who's telling the story that says that you were promised that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor past, nor present, nor powers, or height, or depth, or anything in all creation, or cancer, or teen pregnancy, or homelessness can keep you away from the love of Christ? That's the story right there, right? Now that's a bigger, deeper, more rounded story. That's and I hope that's what Esperanza wants to say. And I hope whatever you do in your life, that's the story that you're telling. And I hope that over the next few weeks that you're able to engage with people and hear it and be able to share that, because that's important. I think about God, right? He does it, and how does He do it, right? Like God just does it. Jesus does it. He always did it just by hanging out with people, right? In the day, he's walking down the street, right? He's just walking down the street, somebody stops and say, hey, this guy, he's deaf, he's mute. Can you heal him? He stops, he goes, he heals, he comes back, he interacts. He's going to the well, he's drinking. Hey, you want to speak into your life here for a minute? He's at the table, eating dinner. Some part of the Last Supper. Tell Judas a little bit about himself. Right? He's just there. He's speaking. He's speaking in the presence, just in the everyday. And I think that's part of here. It's nothing special, nothing big. It's just the everyday. What are those places, those connection points that we can do? And Esperanza, I feel like it's been doing it for a long time. I know that we have. I've seen it upstairs. I used to also work back then. I was working with someone who, the first moment that I saw the way Esperanza did it was when I saw Dr. Melissa Nieves taking a patient into a woman's clinic, and all of a sudden I hear wailing and screaming in the class, in the room. Kind of exam. But it's, the lady had lost her husband, and lost her children in a tragic accident. She pulled her out, and Dr. Nieves comes out and grabs 2 other patients who she knew and had a relationship with, and said, you know what, can you come in, we want to pray for this lady. Let me tell you, they went in and they prayed. How do you show the love of Christ and what we're doing here? We do it when we open up a gym to the school here that has no gym, whose kids were playing, they did a great job using the space that they had. It's probably as big as this room, but to be able to offer them a gym and say, you know what, there's more, we have access. Don't worry, you don't have to pay about it. You don't have to pay for it. I'll tell you a personal story from my own. Right? So here it is. It's 1995. Half of you probably weren't even born. So anyway, I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional home. I was out of my house at 15. I said no, however, luckily, I did well in school. I said my way out of here is to go to college. I have to go to college. Living on my own, I got into Temple. I wound up getting into the program. I was in pre-med. And one day, I find myself working 2 jobs. I'm going to school. I had no place to live, living in my car. The church, or the Spirit and Truth right here, they give me keys to the church and say, hey, just live in the church. So I started living in the church. And I was playing basketball one day and I broke my finger, well, not broke, I fractured my finger. And I'm walking around with this swollen finger, but I don't have insurance, right? So, because I had forged the Temple physical paper. So here I am, I'm walking around and someone says, no, yo, man, you should get that checked out. I said, I don't have any money. And they're like, well, there's this place around the corner that for like $5, they'll check you out. It's called Esperanza. I said, anybody that's going to charge you $5 in this neighborhood to check you out is not worth anything. You got to be out of your mind. Right? So now look at that. Look at that. That was my mentality, right? That's mine. Feeding into a story, right? But it started to get bigger. It was painful when I walked into the clinic and I met this doctor there. I went in. Man, amazing people. So he goes, he sits down, he straps up my finger, and he looks at me. He's like, no, I don't think it's broken. It might be fractured. You don't have any insurance. Okay, how about we'll split it up, give it a little bit, we'll ice it out. And so we were done in like be honest with you, like 4 minutes, 5 minutes. I was like, okay, so. And he sits back and he's like, so, tell me about yourself. I'm like, I got to go. Like, I'm in the doctor's office. Yeah, I know you need to see patients. And he's like, no, tell me about you. His name is Dr. Nadia. And so he looks at, and so I started telling him, to be honest with you, I was at a point right there in my life where I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to have to, I didn't want to drop out. It was just getting tough. We had this conversation, and he encouraged me, and before I walked out there, he said, I just want you to know that you're going to get there. And when you do, if you need a letter of recommendation, come to me, I'll give you one. Who's this guy? He doesn't know me. But let me tell you though, I was excited. I mean, that for me, like there's also like this reverence a little bit back at the time, and that people have within this community for providers, and kind of like, I was like, yo, look, here's this doctor who's looking to me, and I told him this, and he's encouraged. He's like, oh, and he'll give me a recommendation. Man, then maybe I'm almost there. That's Esperanza. That's how you love in a community, right? It is. You're here now. I guess many of you are thinking going into medical, but so is that the all in all? What are you doing? What are we doing to cultivate a different story, help people to a better themselves? And then he prayed for me. As a new Christian, because I had just given my life to the Lord at that point, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And it opened up kind of my eyes a little bit as to like what it might be in terms of medicine. So I'll end up here by just talking a little bit to say, Dr. Galea saw a need, met it, encouraged me, empowered me, and pointed to Christ. I think here in Esperanza, really what we want to do is just point to Christ. I think, I'll tell you the story. I had a guy that came in here one day, and he had a shirt and a tie on, and he walks in, he's like looking lost, and I was like, hey, can I help you with something? He's like, I was told like I can get prayer, like I need to make an appointment for that. And I said, no, you don't need it. What's going on? He felt a little like sheepish a little bit, like he's like, you can tell he was just about to back out. I said, no, I can pray. What do you need prayer for? He's like, let me just tell you, like, I got an idea not too long ago, and he's looking sharp. I got a job interview in a little bit, and I really need this. My mom told me I should come here and get some prayer. That's weird. I'm like, what? I'm like, yo, this is crazy. Like, I was like, absolutely, man. Let me go. Let me pray for you. So I prayed for you. And you know whether or not you got the job? I don't know. But what I do know is that he, at some point, made a connection between Esperanza, or between his job and his need for something else. His desire to want to connect to something more. His need, and maybe that there might be a God that can. Maybe. It wasn't even his mom's like, listen, tell me. And that's what excites me. The fact that he came here and felt free to be able to say, yo, can somebody just pray with me? I'm trying to be real quiet. Absolutely. And to encourage him. And I praise the Lord that here we're in a place where we can do that. There's a responsibility there. Lastly, I'll say that, there's a quote by Brian Stevenson. He's an author, he's a lawyer, founded the Equal Justice Initiative, and he's the author of Just Mercy. And he said, he was talking about politicians, and he said, solutions proposed by politicians don't work because they're crafted in spaces that are too far from the problem. And I remember when we went to go move to the building over there, this was last year, to Esperanza, the new building that we have over at Kensington, and there was this mental health worker that was over there. It's like, he was one of the leaders, and he said, you sure you want to go across the street? Like, you have an opportunity here now. Do you see the encampments that are happening? Do you see what's that? And you see, Esperanza is not about moving away. You have to be in proximity. You have to be engaging where you can see the full story. If not, we'll fall prey to that single story mentality. Trust me, it'll happen. If we want to be actionable, you have to be present. And what you've done, what you're here today is you're being present. You're being in the spaces to be able to see kind of the fullness of the story. He also wrote, I love this, he says, you need to be proximate to suffering and understand the nuanced experiences of those who suffer from and experience inequality. There can't be an effective problem solver from a distance. There are details and nuances to problems that you will miss unless you're close enough to observe those details. You have to be close. Thank you for coming down to Philadelphia. Thank you for being close. Thank you for looking, for being proximate. And with this, I just want to say another thing here, that as you move into positions, not for anything, like the fact that you are going into the medical area has put you in a position of power. Or in a position to be in a place where you'll have access to people, power, spheres of influence. And with that comes the ability to be heard. And sadly enough, North Philadelphia has been in many positions where you haven't had the voice and the advocacy to be heard. And when you can be heard, you have the opportunity to voice a story and for people to listen. And I really want to encourage you that as you go on here these days, that you listen to the stories, you share yours. Yeah, look, blood pressure, they'll be all, but you know what? What is it that you're seeing? And then when you walk out of here, because I consider this my place, when I consider my home, when I consider my daughters and the people around here who say, when I look at the person that says, I can see peace, hope, and joy, even in the midst of brokenness, I hope that you'll be there to help push that story forward. There's a fourth grader who's 10 years old who wrote, and I want to leave you with this. When asked to give an example of their surroundings, he wrote, when I sit by my bedroom window at night, I see many things. When I look up, I see planes and stars. When I look down, I see an alley, my deck, its patio set, and cables in the air. I can see my neighbor's backyard and hanging laundry, a car, a street lamp. I can see restaurants and hear nightclub music. And far off in the distance, I see the city lights glowing. When I look out of my bedroom window, it is a beautiful sight. So from the words of a 10-year-old in this community, I hope that you, when you look out these windows, you walk out there and you get face to face with people that you see the beauty, and that it touches you, it moves you, and then you move that story forward. Amen?